Welcome, conflict resolution and communication, strengthening teams with predictive index. As always, we always start with the talent optimization piece, but I'm going to kind of dive into it and break it up a little bit here. And the fact that when we talk about communication, especially with if there's any conflict with the teams, we always want to look at it from a couple different perspectives, and that's what I'll go over with you today. The first piece, when we look at talent optimization, remember there's always some kind of business strategy and always some kind of result that we want. Now, I will say if the expectations aren't clear, you're already going to have issues. All right. We work with teams a lot of times and it's like, well, what are we supposed to accomplish? And people will say, well, I don't know. One person says this, another person says that, or thinks that. We have to get alignment on what is actually going on and what we want to accomplish. All right. So we have to come back to that strategy. Now, inside of that talent optimization, how PI can help. The first piece is the design. Do we have the understanding of the business strategy, and are we aligning our talent strategy to that business strategy? Just recently had a team, and this has been I would say in the past 6 months, maybe 8. New client had a team. They wanted to accomplish certain things. Came in, the whole team. What I'll show you today is hopefully the technology will work and we can dive into a live demonstration because I have it ready for everybody. But the team wanted to do one thing and execute on some things, and the whole entire team was very high level, very, in PI terms, very high A, low D, the whole team. So there was a lot of conflict, a lot of backbiting, a lot of back and forth, a lot of, hey, I don't know what's going on. Everybody was driving and everybody was getting worn out, and it just wasn't the right team, nor did they have the expectations. So there was a lot of conflict. All right. So we have to align our talent strategy with our business strategy. And you have to ask those questions. So those of you that are champions inside your company, have those questions in mind. Like, are we doing the right thing? Do we even know where we're going? Because if I can put great people on an assignment, but there's going to be a lot of conflict if we don't know where we're going, if we don't have our marching orders, and if we don't have the right team. We'll talk a little bit about the hire piece. I think you guys are pretty locked in, at least this group that's on here, with the hiring piece, but we do need to make sure, like that example, that we have the right people in the right seat. All right. That's always going to create conflict if we don't have that. The other piece that we can work on with this is the Inspire tools that you have inside the PI software. And those are things that we'll talk about later, like, are you doing the manager strategy guide, the relationship guide, the personal development chart, and things of that nature. And then only we want to come back and we want to check, like, how are things going? Are we on track? Okay. So I don't know if anybody wants to answer this or not, but how would you describe your team's current level of engagement and retention? Anybody want to take a crack at that? Silence. How about the next? Oh, Lamar. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, I'm relatively new, but thanks for the invite, Eric. Hello, everybody. But I'm coming from a company that we're owned by a private equity firm, and there's 5 companies that kind of came together, and so now we're all underneath one kind of roof and one name, and really trying to use this resource to kind of help with our engagement. So I'd say right now, probably a 1 out of 10. We're probably hovering around like a 4.55. I mean, people are still here trying to understand that this is the same organization that our organization that they want to be a part of, and we haven't had any like regrettable resignations, right? But we don't know if that's because people are just comfortable where they are they being challenged, or they really like it here or not. So we're just trying to get in front of that.
Good. Thanks for that. What about the second question there? Where do you see gaps between how your people are wired and how they're currently being managed or motivated? Lindsay, don't you have an example of this that you shared with me last week?
Mm, yes. What, do you
Uh,
remember?
yeah, it was I don't how do I say this? It was your Hollywood friends or potential client, I should say, right? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So
They
there
had some,
was,
they seemed like they had a lot of gaps already that you were trying to kind of point out.
yeah, they had, it's a production company in Hollywood, and there's a whole finance team, and they actually had hired someone who was a low D, but they need someone who's a high D dealing with numbers and finance. So he was kind of like, that's good enough with numbers. And he interviewed really well. So they thought, they thought he was going to be great. And then a couple months in, he was not, he wasn't interested in the details. So that was a really big issue when it comes to, money and finances and accounts. So they're needing somebody with, yeah. So that wasn't his motivation. He liked
Yeah,
more of like kind of being
high
out
level
and not
stuff.
really, yeah, he didn't really love, he was a low C also. He didn't love doing kind of monotonous things over a long period of time. So that was a big issue. And they had a whole PR thing, and it was really rough.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks for sharing.
Hmm.
Before we get into the engagement piece, just a quote from Simon Sinek. When people are financially invested, they want to return. When people are emotionally invested, they want to contribute. Um, when you think about how you're invested in the work that you do, I know some of you are very invested. You don't have to have the external motivation. All right. When there's a lot of conflict, a lot of times we're constantly relying on external motivation. And that kind of brings me into the engagement piece. You all have seen this before, but I think it is worth repeating time and time again. There's want to versus have to. Have to, right? Bare minimum. Right. And a lot of times it's not even bare minimum because we're afraid if we let go of somebody, we're not going to be able to replace them in this kind of job market. Like, and maybe you're not there, but we talk to a lot of leaders who are there. It's like, man, I know we need to let go of this person, but we don't think we can replace them. Okay. So we just let them there, let them quiet quit. What about the want to? Like some of you are very much in that want to space. And you don't have to be motivated externally. You naturally want to do those things. Um, yeah, I was part of a great team last week with a bunch of contractors, and we were doing a meetup, but it was virtual. But that whole 2 days was just like a lot of energy. There wasn't for me. I was definitely high up in that want to. Like I just wanted to do those things. I wanted to come. There wasn't like I got up really early both days. Those are the kind of things that we want. Because when we have those, when we're talking about conflict and things like that, a lot of the conflict goes by the wayside when people want to be there. They want to work it out with their teammates. They want to understand how their teammates are wired, who fits where, what pieces go where. And I don't think we talk enough about this. And remember the four forces of disengagement. These are the top four. It's not an all inclusive list, right? But as we look at conflict and as we look at communication, are they in the right job? We talked about that with the hire piece. Right person, right seat. Just because you can doesn't mean you should or will do it and will do it for long periods of time. All right. Are you in the right role? Is the person that we're having conflict with? I mean, Lindsay gave a great example. I mean, that's going to be a contentious environment there because a person is just not wired for the role. Now they could do other things. They could get somebody that's complementary to them to get them to do things. But right now, that's not going to last probably much into the future. This is a big piece here, manager and employee. Like, do your managers understand how their employees are wired? Because a lot of you on the line here are champions for PI. How well are we training our managers and continue to train them on how to work with their employees? Because a lot of managers will just manage the way they're wired. How are we getting them to understand, how's this person is wired? How do I engage that person? The team, which we'll talk about, I'm going to wait a little bit later for that because I want to kind of go live inside the PI software and show you some things that you could be utilizing as well. And then culturally, do they fit the culture? All right. The things that pull engagement up are the same four things. So with this, when we're talking about conflict and communication, are we looking at these main four things first? Right? I think all of you on here, I know most of you, okay, are pretty seasoned. You know when somebody doesn't fit that culture, that's probably not going to work, right? And they probably come to you, Jennifer, and they're like, hey, can you help with this? Can you help with this? Can you help with this? Jennifer's one of the best, but look, we can only do so much if that person doesn't fit that culture. On the team piece, where I'm going to go through and give you some live examples of that. So we're going to talk. So just hold off on that one, training our managers, and then obviously job fit. You guys have all seen this quote by Deming, right? Were they dead when you hired them or did you kill them? When we look at those things that ineffective managers do or don't do, and these are the top three from our poll in 2018, don't communicate clear expectations, a lot of conflict there, right? I hear that every day of every week. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Well, I don't know what you're supposed to do. So let's figure it out. Place favorites. Birds of a feather flock together. That's that thing that we always say in training. The easiest people that you're probably going to have to manage if you're a manager are the people that are wired like you. That's easy. We don't do any of this typically maliciously. It's just unconscious. We don't understand it. And then one of the big things when we talk about communication and conflict and how to better communicate and how to decrease the conflict that are on our teams is to understand career and personal development for our people. One of the best things that we can start with is self-awareness. And I know I harp on this a lot, and I know you've heard this, and if you've been in training, you've heard me talk about this study by Tasha Eurich. It's a TED Talk, 5-year research study with 5,000 participants. In that study, she found that 95% of people thought they were self-aware, but in fact, only 15% were. I think we need to do a better job at helping people understand where they're at, what they're bringing to the table, and who they're managing, and helping the people that they manage with that self-awareness as well. There's lots of things that we can be doing. Self-awareness, just a basic definition. Awareness of your own behavior, drives, needs, and behaviors. The impact that that's going to have on others as well. Because a lot of times conflict arises, I would say probably over 90% of the time when I'm faced with some kind of issue or challenge, when people are asking me about it, I always pull out, say if it's just happening with two people, those two PIs, usually we're able to unwrap that. So somebody There's a manager accused of not listening. Well, all of a sudden they have maybe a high A, maybe with a lower B. And that other person that might be doing the complaining might be very collaborative. Say they might be a really high B and a low A. And so there's tension there and there's conflict and lack of communication. But again, as managers, we have to know how those chess pieces fall and how to move those. It's not a checkers game. It's much more about chess. Understanding how people function, how they move, in which ways did they move, what's going to motivate them. Because a lot of times when we're on those teams, or even if it's just a small team that we're working with, a lot of those behavioral differences can get in the way. And if we understand them a little bit more, they can also be highly complementary, and we can get what's in the way out of the way very quickly when we know how each other's wired and what each other needs and what each other brings to the table. And I'll always go back to, and I know all of you have heard me say this time and time again, but summary of motivating needs, right? The platinum rule: treat people the way they need to be treated for maximum productivity and efficiency, right? Are we getting what we need out of the environment? So look at your people, look at your teams. Now keep this in mind. So if you don't have this, this is page 6 of your toolkit. So you might want to have that out when we get to the live demonstration in just a little bit with the teams, because I'm going to ask you questions that revolve around this, okay? So it's going to be a little bit more interactive. So think about the difference between a high A and a low A idea channel. Just gave you a great example of this. Maybe I'm a low A that needs, more collaboration, more encouragement, and or maybe I've been put in a team with a bunch of high A's. So things aren't getting listened to, I'm not feeling part of. Could be a lot of conflict there. Okay, and could switch as well. Think about that B drive, the communication channel. Maybe I'm an internal thinker and I'm just surrounded by a bunch of high B's. All right. Maybe I need time to think through things. A lot of times what will happen, especially as like teams start to scale or companies start to scale, is we have a whole bunch of people that are low C. And then what the team needs is a high C or a couple high C's. But if we're not prepared for that, that can create a lot of communication issues and conflict as well. Lindsay gave us a great example of the D drive. What happens, and again, this happens a lot of times in our smaller groups and things, where that D drive is a little bit low a lot of times with the team, and we bring somebody in that provides structure, and that's going to be a little awkward for everybody. That could create some conflict. Carrie, you're in the September 4th training. Aren't you already in the training?
Yeah, July.
July, yeah. I'm sorry.
It's in there. It's in there.
Yeah, it's in there. So it's in that data toolkit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, on page 6. Sorry, the next training is September 4th. All right, so I don't know how many of you have been using this, but this is a great way to increase communication and avoid a lot of the conflict for many reasons. All right, we have this example here. This is Caroline. She's a maverick. But you see all those bullet points. If you're not familiar with this or you haven't seen this yet, we recommend doing this every quarter, this strategy guide. It's not going to change, but what might change are the boxes that get checked. Okay, so Caroline's a maverick. So that first row there is her A over B or B over A. So I don't know. I mean, you can have either one if you're a Maverick. I don't have the pattern in front of me, but she still needs those challenges. What if she's not getting those challenges? She might not be able to articulate that when she's in front of her manager, but now if she completes this before she comes in for her one-to-one, and again, I recommend doing that quarterly, then it might be a topic of discussion. And again, avoiding a lot of conflict. The next row there would be her A over C combination. So there could be things that we are doing really well here. There could be things that we need to concentrate on. And that last row is her A over D, where she needs to be big picture. What we do with that is when we sit down, and again, some people say, well, man, you want me to do this every quarter? Yeah, because if I can avoid a lot of the headaches that come with things down the road, then why not do it now? A lot of people just push it down the road. And then what happens is that conflict just becomes greater and greater. Why not put it and talk about it every quarter so that every 90 days we get a new game plan? What's going on? What's taking place? Okay, some of us that use an operating system like EOS or something like that, you might bring your rocks or your goals into this, where you're having that discussion and say, okay, what's the next step? What are you doing well? What do you need help with? And then you develop the action plan with the person. Okay, so think about that. What happens? And you don't necessarily have to answer this, but if we're going over these things with people, what happens if we're getting ahead of the challenges? Usually a little bit less conflict. We're getting squared up on what is actually going on with this person. When people feel part of, remember that quote that we shared, when they're emotionally invested. This is a time to get emotionally invested with folks. Using that strategy guide to go over those things. Are there any blockers? Me as a manager, maybe I'm a blocker. Maybe I just need to get out of the way. Maybe the blocker is expectations. Maybe the blocker is I don't have 1, 2, or 3 yet. I need to do that to complete. But a lot of times we lose good people, or we have a lot of conflict because we don't have a great plan. What happens when people have good targets? Targets motivate. Targets actually, if we look at it from a mental health standpoint or a neuroscience standpoint, they actually decrease the anxiety when we have good targets. Because if I don't know what I'm shooting at, then I'm just doing maybe too much. A lot of times I'm just doing too much. When I'm more focused on that target and everybody knows the marching orders, you have a lot less conflict. Does that make sense? Because a lot of people probably come to a lot of you and they're complaining about this, that, or the other thing. It's like, well, yeah, we don't have a good plan. We talked a lot about working with this. I think it was a couple lunch and learns ago. We talked a lot about this, using this in conjunction with that coaching guide, right? Being able to, during that quarterly review, when we're using the strategy guide, bring the coaching guide back out. Like, and this would be a hard coach. All right. This would be, all right. You're asking Bernie, right? So those of you that have eyeballs on this, all I want you to look, not just look at the DA combination, Bernie's A over D, and we've put Bernie in a D over A role. Those of you that know this know that those are A and D are your two strongest drives. This is probably not going to be sustainable. Okay. So the conflict's going to come from Bernie here in this example not being in the right role. Now, let's say it's something like we walk through. I mean, a good explanation of this is what we walk through when I onboard any new consultant on, because there's a lot of information that you have to learn up front. But the light at the end of the tunnel is you only have to do that for the first 6 to 8 months. Once that's over, you get to go back to being a little bit more higher level, solving problems. But that first 6 to 8 months, you really have to pay attention with those people because it's very difficult. It was difficult when I was learning it. It was like, oh man, all this stuff. I just want to go out and solve problems, be big picture, be around people. Here I'm stuck in an office. It's a little bit easier nowadays, but back when I was learning it, and just it's lots of detail. So there was a lot of conflict, but I was able to talk that through with someone. The other piece of this that you want to work on during that quarterly review is the relationship guide. Okay, it can be a game changer when people know what's going on. Because if I have a conflict, say in this scenario, say we've got Tom and Stephanie here. So say I'm Tom and my manager is Stephanie. If I don't know that Stephanie's wired as she is, there's going to be a lot of conflict between she and I. Right? I don't want to, I think she doesn't want to have a conversation, and it's just not her. But if I understand where she's coming from, that when I go in to meet with her, maybe I need to be a little bit more factual. Maybe she doesn't want to talk all the time, and that's okay. That goes a long way in reducing some of that conflict. So as we go from this into our more live demonstration in just a few minutes, especially as it revolves around teams, I want you to think about what actually is going on. Like, this is just two people. The example that I have, the live example that I have for all of you is 10 people. All right. And I'm going to move things around. We're going to do the analytics first, and then we're going to do the teams. But I want you to think about what this brings together when we look at not just the factors, but I want you to start looking at the factor combinations. Okay. That's why we always want you to come back and do more than one training with PI. That's why we offer the second one for free, because when we look at this, we have somebody in Stephanie that's high A, low B, and then we have Tom that's B over A. We also have, though, that DB combination, if you look at it. Tom is high B, low D, and Stephanie's high D, low B. So Tom's a little bit more informal. Stephanie's going to think he's coming to the one-to-one, not prepared, because she tends to be a little bit more formal. Well, if they knew this going into it, we could eliminate some of that conflict. So we're going to take this and we're going to look at it in a broader perspective when it comes to the team in just a bit, okay? So looking at the teams, designing the teams to execute the business strategy flawlessly. Going back to TO, talent optimization. When you look at your business strategy, does it match your talent strategy? And does our talent strategy align to that business strategy? Let's take a quote from MJ here. Right? Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. You've got to have all the right people on the bus. They all have to know how each other drives, because we have to take turns at some time. So one of the things that we're going to do is I've got a live example. So I'm going to jump into my PI software with you guys in just a bit. But we're going to take a look at a team. So you can kind of eyeball it right now. And it's like, oh boy, we got a bunch of low C's. So those of you that have been doing this a while, you know what that's going to be like in a meeting. Like everybody's got new ideas. Everybody wants to create. Nobody wants to implement. Well, that could be a problem. That could be highly conflictual. So we're going to look at it that way. But we're also going to look at it, and I know some of you don't have this ability, but if you want it, we can get it put in for you. But we have the same as we have for reference profiles, that design platform inside of PI. For those that have it, there's a team type in there. And there are 9 different team types, okay, that we'll talk about, and I'll show you an example of it. And then we're going to come back and debrief. Okay, but we're first going to, let me just jump out of this and then jump into the software. Screen got big. So let me go back and show you how I do this. So all of you have this ability. Okay, everybody, if you just have that basic package of Hire and Inspire, you can go under Browse right here, go into Analytics, okay, which I'm in right now. So you just hit that Analytics piece. Does everybody see that? And then you list the people that you want. If you don't have the teams, you have to list the people individually. Okay. So these are all made up delightful fruits. Okay. And then we want to hit create report. So what do I have here? So we've taken everybody and we've put them in a blender. Now, what do you see as far as the team? Go back and look at your factor combinations, and this will tell you how this team is likely to operate. One of the prominent things we have here is A over C. Okay? If I have a high A, low C team, are they going to tend to be more proactive as a team or more responsive as a team? Caleb, yes, proactive. Now, the other factor combination that comes in there is A over D, high A, low D. Is this team comfortable with risk or risk averse?
Comfortable.
Yes. Okay. So does that kind of team work for every scenario? No. Okay. Now you have the ability inside of this group analytic function to also look per individual. All right. So they do have some high C's. What we find a lot with smaller companies that are scaling or departments, and Lamar, you mentioned, you're bringing five different companies in. There might be a situation in some of those companies where they've not had anybody that has any C drive, like high C. So they might not have any implementers and everybody's low. And now we're bringing in into a system where we're putting in some process and procedure. There's going to be some conflict there for sure.
Definitely.
Okay. And we have to prepare for that. not all conflict is bad, but when you're prepared for it, it makes it a lot easier. Sometimes we need it. It's like, oh, I don't like the conflict of having to pay attention for long periods of time, but there are times where I have to do it, right? I don't want to do it all the time, but there's also people that we strategically put into place that do those things. Okay. What if Bernie is the manager of this team? And he doesn't have PI yet. What do you think's going to happen? Do you think he's going to now? Bernie's a high A, high B, low C, low D. If he doesn't have PI, how do you think he's going to act with Apple, right? Who's completely opposite. Cherry, who's a low B. Melon. So this helps reduce the conflict just by knowing where everybody sits in a meeting. If this is my team. Okay. Any questions on this? Sometimes people don't ask questions when we get to this because let's see what's in the chat. Yeah, so Caleb put in the chat, he isn't going to provide enough details during his team meetings. Employees might not feel like they understand expectations. That's very good, okay? Especially these four are going to have a meeting afterwards and go like, I don't know what Bernie's talking about. Like, does anybody? So as you build your team, now remember the business strategy? So if the business strategy is process improvement, structure, now we have to look and hire less of the average and more towards this side. Because our talent strategy doesn't currently match the business strategy. That's how we know. Going back to that very first slide that I shared with all of you. How do we switch it? Well, we got to bring in more kiwi. We got to bring in more apple. We got to bring in more fig. Okay. A little bit more structure. If it's the process, then we got to go. We can find people that have that high C, high D, that have the structure and the process. And I know all of us have dealt with this at some period in our companies. Carrie, I know you're going to see it a lot as you continue, facilitating groups, because a lot of the people that join, a lot of times when we look at their teams initially, it's a lot of high A, low C, low D, and that's why they're joining. It's like, well, help me, right? Help mentor me, and that's what they need. Okay, not all of them, but quite a few of them are like that. Any questions on this before I jump to the team? All right. So I realize not all of you have this, but if you're interested, please give us a call and talk more about it. But it is what we call design. It's what we just did with the analytics. So I would tell you, get good with the analytics first, okay, before you ask about the design piece. All right, that's what we tell everybody. We don't want you to have something that you're not going to utilize. But with our companies that now utilize design, they use it in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to take the same team. Okay. How come that didn't work? So I'm going to take the same team. Now, what it's going to do is I can hit this little button. And it can show me the factor combinations too. But it's going to put everybody in one of 4 quadrants. So now I can look at this. This is something that you can use. Those of you that are really strong PI Jedis, you can use this with managers without explaining everything about PI, right? Because if I say I need more teamwork and employee experience and we only have one person up there, what's going to happen? Okay. What happens if we take that person out? Like I have the ability to hide. And we say, hey, look, we want more interaction with our folks internally. Or it could be a customer service experience. This did happen. This is very similar to one of the things that I ran into years ago. And this is how we course corrected, but I had a very large company. They had 23 staff in their HR department. So it's a pretty large company. And that's what one of their yearly initiatives was we're going to increase the employee experience. And when we did this, there was no one, absolutely no one up in this quadrant. And actually, most of them were down here where it's results oriented. I mean, they would get things done, but think about your human resource department that's very results oriented, not people oriented. And when they had surveyed the rest of the people inside the company, it's like, well, HR is not very hospitable. They're not, we can't go to them. We feel like we're being put off or things like that. So what they did, and again, it wasn't anybody's intention. It's just how the department rolled. And what had happened is they just kept hiring those kind of people in that department. What they did is then they went and they hired more of that high B, lower C, high B and C drives. So to make that employer experience, make more teamwork, okay, and they stopped being so siloed. So it started matching, okay? Does that make sense? So we do have the ability to pull people out too with this. So I can hide people. It's like, okay, what if we took, Christina out? What would happen? Okay, we can put them back in. The thing that comes with this is, and you can download it, is you can also look at the individual strengths, right? You can click on everybody and see what's going on. But there's also activities that come with that. And again, you have the ability to do this. This just gives you some exercises. All right, I might in a group, if I'm doing this in a group setting, I might pull out, Christina Cherry here and say, okay, how do you work with Molly Mellon? What's going on? And then the next piece that we can do there is look at what kind of team do we have. So I would do this for all of my teams just as a starting point. So you can see an adapting team. Okay. Is this what we want? Go back to our business strategy. Does my talent strategy align to what we're going to accomplish? It may align, or we need to maybe make some strategic hires. move people around, see what's going on. Oh, I never thought of this person, right? Good thing we have that person or we wouldn't get anything done. It gives you the strengths and then it gives you the cautions, the caution areas with that. You can all, if you do have this, you can workshop this inside of your companies. Or you might just do it with leaders. You might look at the team, but the team's not looking at it, but the leaders are looking at it and saying, okay, what do I need here? What do I need here? Oh, that's why, we're struggling with maybe this person or that person. How could we get more out of the team? And you have some stats there. 75% of people on adapting teams report that the people on their team understand each other's point of view versus 32% of adapting teams report that their team members are unclear on their roles and responsibilities. Could be the right team, might not be. And then you can do takeaways. Okay, here's where we get to what we're talking about today. Do we know the guidelines? Are we communicating the expectations? A lot of times the answer is no, so we have to look at that. Conflict resolution. Are the goals clear? On this type of team, I would say the goals probably are not clear because you could see you have it's speckled all around. An adapting team has just learned to do that. They've learned to adapt, which is great. Just think about what happens when they have the right expectations and they understand their responsibilities. And then the teamwork piece. And again, this might sound like very basic and not too profound to a lot of you that have been doing this for a while. But when you reveal this to managers and they go, wow, like that happens in the room quite a bit. Okay, and then we talk about teamwork. But one of the things that I would do that this allows us to do is when we put this on the big screen in front of everybody, it's like, well, what do we have? Does it even align? Are we doing the right things? Are the expectations correct? Or do they have the expectations? Do they know what the goal is? Do they know what the target is? And then that next step would be objectives. Okay. And you would start setting the objectives for the team. Okay. So what do you think?
Eric,
Any-
Lindsay reminded me too. I don't know if some of them here have PI2. So group analytics is going to be accessed a little bit differently. So
Yes.
it's going to appear in your right-hand corner. There should be a little graph icon. And if you click on that graph icon, it will take you to the analytics feature. So that's for people that don't have the design module. You can do some team activities there.
Yeah, what Rod was talking about. So those of you with PI2, I'll just show everybody. Thank you, Lindsay, for bringing that up. If you look here, if you go up,
Yeah, next one, yeah, right there.
right, it's in that group analytic, you can do the same thing.